Hi, we're talking about the effects of bullying on children and youth. This is part 4. In part 1, we examine the links between bullying and mental health, and we examine in particular their temporal sequence. So is it the case that children become unwell as a consequence of being bullied, or is it the reverse? Studies seem to suggest that children do indeed become unwell because they're treated poorly by their peers. In part 2, we examine the heterogeneity of mental health problems. So why is it that some kids are more depressed than others is one example. We looked at context, the context of the family, the context of the classroom. We looked at personal characteristics such as gender, and we looked specifically at biology and how certain biological profiles can be a risk factor or a protective factor. In part 3, we explained why bullying hurts so much by presenting recent evidence from neuroscience suggesting that social pain, so the pain you experience when you're ostracized or humiliated or rejected, is perceived by your brain as physical pain. So it would explain why it hurts so much and so long-lasting. And now we're going to talk about what can be done to reduce bullying. So is there anything that we should be doing to improve the plight of individuals who are being bullied? So I'm going to argue there are many things that can be done, but I'm going to present evidence on creating a positive classroom climate as one way of ameliorating children's lives. So what is a class climate? So school climate or class climate is the collective beliefs, values, and attitudes that prevail at a school. And it's measured in different components. So for example, safety. Are there clear and consistent rules? Physical safety, attitudes about violence, and bullying. So that encompasses school climate. What about teaching and learning? So the quality of instruction, the extent to which social, emotional, and academic learning is valued, whether professional development is systematic and ongoing. Relationships, which I would argue are the first R of education. Is there respect for diversity in your school, a sense of connectedness among members in the community, a pattern of positive relationships between and among students, educators, and their families? And finally, the environment matters. The physical environment matters, including cleanliness, order, appeal in the facilities, and adequate resources. So altogether, that's what I mean, and what a lot of times what scientists mean by school climate. Now, what is school climate related to? So a positive school climate has been shown consistently to be related to higher academic achievement. Good school climate, positive school climate, better grades for students. It's also been linked to mental health. So positive school climate is related to better mental health, and these are studies that have shown it concurrently and longitudinally. And it's also related to the reduction of bullying, which is the topic we're focused on here. One of my colleagues, Cornell, has done a lot of work looking at climate, school climate, and how it relates to aggression, teasing, and bullying. And so applying that broad definition of school climate. So what Dewey's done is that Dewey Cornell has applied the parenting, a very famous way of categorizing parenting styles, to schools. So what you see is that parents around the world typically parent their children in a similar way. These 4 styles are pretty common across different cultural groups. You see the authoritarian parent, where it's their way or the highway, so they're dictators. The rules are the rules in their house. Then there's the negligent parent, whatever, I don't care. Then there's the permissive parent. Do whatever you want, sure, that's fine. And then there's the ideal parent, where it's the authoritative parent. So it's more like a democracy, let's figure it out. When you look at child outcomes based on this, what you see is that children who come from authoritarian, negligent, and permissive families, where their parents parent in this style, have poorer outcomes, child outcomes. And that's been shown across many, many different studies, many different cultural groups, reference groups, or not reference group, but cultural groups. So we see this over and over again. And we see that kids who fare the best have parents that are a mixture of high structure and high support. So using these 4 types of parenting, Dewey Cornell and his colleagues applied it to schools. Could we characterize schools based on being authoritarian, negligent, permissive, and authoritative? And this is what he did find, that you could do that. So based on whether or not they had a lot of structure or low amount of structure, or high support or low support, he could characterize those schools. So using a very large data set, what he found was that the type of school climate mattered on the prevalence, for the prevalence of teasing and bullying. So if there was high structure and high support, the bullying prevalence rates were the lowest. So the red line are student reports, and the blue line are independent teacher reports. So typically we see teachers and students holding similar views, but not a perfect correlation. And here you see that it's almost identical, the pattern. So they're saying that if there's low structure and low support, that you have the highest bullying rates in those schools. So what can we do to improve bullying? If we look at our school climate, so we assess whether or not we have low structure or high structure, low support or high support. So if we can look at our school climate and we can categorize it and do something about it to ameliorate it so that we have high structure and high support, so we have rules, but we also we care, so we have the structure of, we allow children some autonomy, but not everything. They're not making all the decisions. And we do it in a caring way. We should reduce bullying, increase academic achievement, and improve mental health.
Can you talk a little more about the teaching and learning in that environment? I wondered if you could talk a little more about the teaching and learning in the environment, especially around social emotional skills.
So there are studies that show that the teacher-student relationship is really important. And it's actually a pretty easy fix in some ways, and we don't think about it. So there are studies that suggest that things like greeting behavior improves students' well-being and their motivation to learn. So little things like the teacher coming in and saying, hey, I noticed you weren't at school yesterday. Is everything okay? Or did you get a haircut? That looks great. So the little things that we notice. Meeting them at the front door so that they know that we care and that we're excited to see them. Studies show that those little things improve classroom climate and students' motivation to attend school. And I always give this example from my daughter. So my daughter is an elite soccer player, and she a couple of years ago had a black eye, and it's par for the course, right? She's a keeper. So you would think if a student came into your school who had a black eye, due diligence would be that you ask them if everything's okay. And for the most part, she loves school and she loves her teachers. But she had one teacher that she never felt cared about her. And I kept saying, I don't know, trying to reformulate it. Give me examples of why you don't think she cares about you. So this was an ongoing dialogue that we had for almost the entire term. When she showed up at school with a black eye, every teacher asked her about it, even teachers that she didn't have. Everything okay? What happened to you? Except for the teacher she didn't think she had a relationship with. And that was the teacher she didn't want to work hard for. She didn't think cared about her. So I know it's anecdotal, but that anecdotal evidence is supported by other studies that say that that relationship is important. And studies show that it's particularly important for girls.
My question is, how do you have a school recognize that they're a healthy school and that they're offering structure and that they're offering high levels of support? Because my assumption would be that most schools would think that they're already doing that.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where a lot of times we think we have evidence, and it's anecdotal, which is funny because I just presented anecdotal evidence, and yet we need to actually look at it empirically. So I did a study, Chuck Cunningham was the lead, where we asked educators, like, why would you take up this anti-bullying program versus another anti-bullying program? And their source of evidence, for the most part, was that somebody else, another educator, told them it worked. But it's interesting because when you then look at these programs empirically, you see that they don't work. So people think they work, but they're not working. So exactly, schools will think that they are doing right by kids, and that's that's a concern because they may not be doing it. So this is where we do need science in the classroom. We do need science in schools. We need to be assessing things a little bit more empirically. So we put a lot of attention into reading, writing, and arithmetic, making sure we're doing right by children in those areas. But we don't put as much attention to social emotional learning. And we need to be measuring social emotional learning because social emotional learning begets better grades, right? I mean, Vygotsky and Piaget said that. Cognition is socially mediated. We would expect that children will do better when they want to attend school, you know, because they like school, because kids like them, because they like kids, because they feel their teacher cares about them.
Off the top of your head, if I'm a principal or I'm a team of teachers and I'm watching this, what would be your advice to me to do starting tomorrow?
I would survey your school personnel, the staff, and I would survey the students. And there's ways to assess your structure and support empirically. It's a pretty easy way to measure it and then get a feel for it. And then move forward, obviously.